Just waiting to see if this is live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Depending on when you're watching this, it is now 6:33 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and this is Politics and You, the roundtable talking about American and Canadian political issues that are actually tied to the average person. Unlike most political analysis talk shows you're going to see, this is just average people coming on board, seeing what they, telling what they think about the politics in their sector. What issues are important to them, who they're following, and who they're probably going to support in the political arena, and why. So yeah, let's take it off. Our first guest this evening is Mitchell Willie. He's a known YouTuber, specifically with the World of Darkness games, role-playing games. Whereabouts are you in the U.S., and have you been following the race thus far?
I'm in Western Kentucky, and I haven't really been following too closely because I've seen enough of the candidates to know that most of them are going to annoy me.
Well, okay. Well, let's go into which ones are annoying you most and why.
Well, for starters, I would like it to be known that I registered to vote as a Republican back when the Republican Party was reasonable. Before they left all sense, logic, and reason behind. And there is the entire Republican race, like all of the Republican candidates at this point. It's just a massive train wreck of racism and ignorance and science denialism and theocratic nonsense. There's no like actual logic or reason in the party at this point anymore.
Fair enough. We just are joined by Rafe. Rafe, where are you from, and what are your thoughts on this?
Rafe is muted. I don't know if that's intentional.
Yep. Rafe, feel free to unmute yourself. Welcome to the show.
Oh, he dropped out.
Okay. So, okay. Well, I guess then, as you were saying, though, is there a kind of a scale in terms of how bad the Republican Party is going? Like, is there kind of like a worst out there, and then going up to people who are even borderline sensible, or is it just one giant cluster?
It's so bad. It's so bad. I'm like, okay, Jeb Bush currently actually seems like the most reasonable candidate, and he is infinitely dumber than George W. If that explains anything to those watching. He has very few actual qualifications as a human being, as opposed to have political ones. But the stuff that comes out of his mouth tends to make more sense than stuff that comes out of the other mouths, and that's really a scary place to be, because like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like a low-level primate, and 10 being, you know, a reasonable human being, he rates somewhere below Snow Shovel and Brick, and they just get progressively worse after that. By far the worst offender is Donald Trump, and I am really not so. I'm still at this point, I'm hoping this is like just some big elaborate prank that he's playing on the nation, because there's no way that anyone with half a brain could take Donald Trump seriously with the things that exit his mouth.
Your thoughts on this, William Burgess? William Burgess just joined the show. Okay. On another topic, shifting the focus slightly. As the average, as an average citizen in your areas, what issues do you guys consider important to yourself? What issues are important to you in politics, like right now? And even if the politicians aren't covering them, you know, what do you think needs to be? What do you think seriously needs to be covered from the federal level to a local, to your local area?
Just a moment.
Well, Mitchell is Mitchell is doing his side thing. William, your thoughts?
Really, I really think that the Affordable Care Act, seems to be revisited and completely abolished, but that's just me.
I wouldn't go that far. I don't think abolished. I think it took the wrong approach to healthcare reform in the United States.
Far. I think abolished, it probably is a little far, but I think the regulations on it need to be revisited and revamped.
How would you propose they need to be revisited and revamped?
Well, I mean, it's like most of the healthcare. I mean, I work with the industrial industry, and to provide healthcare for your family is like $144 a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ridiculous. I mean, unless you're making $30 an hour, $30 an hour, I mean, I make pretty decent, but that's pretty freaking ridiculous if you ask me.
All right. Your thoughts on this, Mitchell?
I think it took the wrong approach. The problem in healthcare is not now, nor has it ever been, that people. It's never been a problem that can be fixed with health insurance. It's a band-aid solution. It's not one that was thought out well. They assumed that, well, why don't we just make healthcare insurance something that everyone can reach for? And the problem with that is that a lot of the costs that are incurred in medical facilities they're not things that more insurance is going to lessen. So you're not really getting out a lot cheaper. You're not getting out any cheaper at all, in my opinion. I'm not some kind of like economic analyst, but it seems to me that it's a step in the right direction by taking 2 steps in the wrong direction first. I think that rather than attacking healthcare through insurance, I think we should attack healthcare costs in the United States by attacking the direct factors that influence those costs.
Anything you'd like to elaborate on, William?
I actually would agree with that. I think the key case is, and this brings up minimum wage, and I'm not saying raise the minimum wage by any stretch of the imagination, but what I am saying is, you know, you want a healthy country, okay, why is a freaking double cheeseburger at McDonald's $1 and, you know, a carrot or, you know, a healthier choice is like $5? It's like, wait, what? This is a problem.
Well, while we're on the subject of the minimum wage, I'd like to know your guys' thoughts as people who work as people who work for a living. What are your thoughts on this idea of the raising the minimum wage, and how does that tie in terms of rate? Does it actually mean that that wages overall get raised, or are there problems with this idea?
Well, if you're going to do something about poverty in the U.S. In any fashion, what you need to do first is work with the minimum wage, but that can't be your only solution. Just raising the minimum wage will not solve all of our problems. It is a multifaceted problem, and honestly, if you just raise the minimum wage without actually going through and looking at some of the other economic issues that minimum wage holders and those just slightly above that in economic brackets deal with, then you're really missing a lot here. Now, there is something to be said for raising the minimum wage. To my knowledge, there's not a place in the entirety of the United States where somebody working full-time making minimum wage can afford to live completely by themselves, unless they live in some like a trailer, like a camper or something like that, because it's very small. But when you just raise the minimum wage, then that's not going to like bump everyone else up a pay grade at all. What that's going to do is, if you do it by itself, yes, it will bring in more money to local businesses. It will circulate money through the economy a little faster, but the people just above minimum wage aren't going to get raises for that. They're going to be stuck in about the same spot as they are, or they're going to be making minimum wage when before they were making more, because that's the way that businesses tend to operate, and that's going to cause a lot of problems with them and a lot of stress for them.
That's kind of the category I fall into. So.
Okay, so William, as one directly affected by this, what do you think would be a more appropriate solution?
I don't know that there is one right now. Like, I really hate to say that, but I mean, the whole thing is just one big mess that I don't know that anybody has the right answer or answers, because I think to really fix it, you would need multiple answers on multiple issues.
Well, while we're on the subject of that, I wanted to ask you guys. I know that there has been reports that the U.S. has recuperated since the 2007 recession. That being said, though, how's the economic problems up on the top side? Has that been affecting you guys at all in the average day-to-day life?
I mean, gas is cheaper, but
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
like,
I mean,
the recession, I really didn't see it. I really didn't deal a whole lot with, oh God, it's so hard, because it was just like, okay, if I lose my job, find another one. I mean,
Well-
you do what you got to survive.
And
So,
when we talk about the recession being better, one of the things that we're looking at are unemployment numbers. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the problem with that is that there are a lot of people, especially millennials, that have just quit the search for a job entirely. Like they're no longer looking for work, and if they're not actively looking for work, they're not going to be factored into those unemployment numbers. There's a different set of statistics for that, but nobody talks about those. They just want to talk about the unemployment numbers. There are a lot of people that have given up on the job search. To be brutally honest with you, I'm one of them. I sit at home right now and I write and I do YouTube videos occasionally when I get around to doing them on theology and gameplay and things like that, and try to make a buck here and there. But I'm not actively engaged in the search for work anymore because there's really nothing here. I can't get anything.
So, just out of curiosity, William, in your area, do you see the same problem of people giving up the search for work? And if so, are the reasons similar to those that Mitchell's been doing?
I mean, I pretty much, I have no family where I live, so I have no one to fall back on. Me personally, it's a matter of find a job. It's a matter of I have to fend for myself. So as far as that, I can only speak from personal experience, which is, I've gone periods without work and things have gotten tough, but it's a matter at that point of fiscal responsibility and making sure I have what I need in my savings to cushion for if things get bad. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that works well for people like single people or people with very, very low overheads can do that really easily. But if you start talking to people, a friend of mine has 4 kids. I mean, that's just not something that they can deal with. I know another couple with a newborn, and they've only got the 3 of them to support, and they're still having problems finding work because when you take I mean, I live in a small town. When you take small town hiring issues in with the economic problems that we've been seeing and the restrictions that the ACA has put on businesses and things of that nature, what you're seeing is an increase in I mean, because I don't know how it is in other small towns, but here, if you don't know somebody, you're not getting a job to start with. It doesn't matter how qualified you are. If they don't like you, if they don't like the way you look, if they don't like the way you talk, if they don't like your mother's hairdresser, then that's it. You have nothing. You're kind of screwed. Unless you go to work for a big chain store. Well, in that case, you're increasingly being shuffled through a digital line of applications where you're not sure that anyone's actually even seen the thing yet. And yes, I'm all for the increase in connectivity that provides. But I mean, if you have no chance to, because if you don't get in for an interview, then you've got nothing. But again, that's a lot of factors in a very small area, and there's only so many jobs to go around. So I mean, you're going to see an uptick in entrepreneurship for people who think they can afford it or people who think that they have no other alternative. But I don't think that the employment rate itself is something that we should be measuring the economy by necessarily.
Thoughts, William?
On that, I actually have none. Again, I mean, I went into the job I have now with no prior experience in it, and I make more than minimum wage. So,
without trying to reveal too much into details about the background's issues, given the fact that there has been given the fact that again, depending on which sector you're in, there's either increasing regulation or increasing deregulation. William, why not tell us a little bit more about your field and what has government regulation been affecting? Having increasing regulation or deregulation been affecting the industry that you're in?
Not from what I've seen. I mean, but then again, I'm the new guy at my job. So it's kind of like I work with car parts and whatnot. So it's kind of like government regulation. Oh, okay, just make the car. So,
All right, fair enough.
sorry, I wish I had more to give you on that, but
No, it's okay. It's fair enough. I was going to say, okay, so Mitchell, you were talking about restrictions by the ACA. Could you elaborate into that a little bit for the dumb Canadian over here?
Oh, well, when the Affordable Care Act went into place, a lot of people threatened that it was going to cause problems with employers, and that the additional quote unquote restrictions were going to, and this is again all hearsay. I haven't done a study on it, nor have I been employed in an official like normal 9 to 5 grown up job capacity since then. But there was talk that people would have problems being able to keep their staff at the size that they were currently keeping them, that hours might have to be cut, that people might have to be cut because the benefits were going to be necessarily more comprehensive and or expensive. I haven't personally seen that because I have not worked for anyone else in that time period. So I don't know, but I know that that was something that was bandied around a lot against the ACA in this area. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, fair enough. I guess while we're on the subject here, we've been going for about 20 minutes, and I so far haven't seen any Canadians pop in for to talk about Canadian politics. So, unless anybody else is popping in for American politics, is there any other issues you guys wanted to cover, like even just not just the Affordable Care Act? Is there anything from your guys' perspective that you think needs to be changed in American society? That legislation or better policy could possibly change. Like any issues you guys hold especially dear.
Man, where to start? First off, as much as we've done for, and I say much in air quotes, you can't see it, but they're there. As much as we've done for the state of physical health with the ACA, we haven't really done anything in this country about mental health problems. And there's still a massive stigma on mental health. And it's still very difficult to get the aid that you need, the help that you require if you have any kind of like mental illness or developmental condition like that. There's also the issue of climate change and how politicians are routinely ignoring solid, hard, ridiculously in-your-face facts and hand-waving them as though they don't exist. The criminalization of intellectualism, for lack of a better term, is really going to put us in a bind sooner rather than later. That's a big problem. I think that's really mostly my two big issues. The rest of them are societal issues that aren't really things that legislature could really fix.
All right, fair enough. William, your thoughts on both of these and any personal issues that you think should be changed with the political system?
Most of my issues are societal issues. Like, honestly, I'm sitting here going, politically, I it is what it is, and most of the issues I'm sitting here going, this is an issue, is societal issues.
Well, while we're on the subject, then, since we've got the time, since politics is in part by definition the way that people interact with each other, societal issues might as well be, even if the politicians can't fix them. What societal issues do you guys see that need to be severely changed, and do you have any ideas as to how to go, from your perspective, as to how we start going about changing them?
Almost all of the ones that I see are caused by just ignorance, and it's dictionary definition, it's actual definition. Because there are things like this complete nonsense of extremist right-wing Christians believing that there is some kind of war on fundamental Christianity. Well, there's not. You're not being persecuted against just because other people get the same rights that you enjoy already. Then, coupled with that, this Islamophobia that is rampant in the country, which makes no sense to me whatsoever at all.
Yes.
Again, is something that's being done by, it's perpetrated by extremists against other extremists, and any moderate in the middle on either side is going to go, what the heck is this about? Like, there's no sense in it at all whatsoever. the way that we handle reproductive rights, parental rights, and sex education in this country are all completely abhorrent. We may as well live in some kind of middle-aged theocracy. It's getting ridiculous. And I don't know, maybe we should just all chill out and drink more coffee.
Your thoughts, Will?
I actually agree with the closing statement on that. It's everybody just, kind of like, everybody just chill the hell out and, drink some coffee, smoke a blunt if that's your thing, smoke a cigarette, do whatever you got to do, but just, people, cool your tits.
This brings us to another section that I've been wanting to do, and I'm just going to toss an idea out there for debate with you guys. Given the fact that we seem to be having a lot of these ideas of people holding to their particular ideologies first, and less of keeping in touch with reality second. And again, this is just my own personal opinion on this. I also would hope that you guys would debate this as well, whether this is actually true. But is this true? And if true, should we be trying to look for a new way? Should we be trying to look for a new system whereby we interact and determine what is moral from first principles? So this way, hopefully, we have something that. So this way, we can have at least a system of debate and stability that people can agree on for dealing with issues. Well,
at this point, I think it's important to realize that a really good example of this is how religion treats religion. That's where most of my experience lies. But if you'll notice, the vast majority, if not all, of the major world religions, I can't speak to a lot of the smaller ones, but all of the major world religions have the exact same discussions about how you should treat other human beings. All of them. They all agree on that. And yet every single vocal majority in those religions is pointing fingers at each other and screaming instead of doing what their own faith says. And that's kind of a problem. And when you establish an ideology from that, from a place of interpretation rather than a place of understanding, you're always going to have a problem. People who deny vaccines are effective or safe are people who are completely ignoring verifiable, demonstrable facts that we can show them. There are studies that have been done about this. There are situations wherein we have seen diseases nearly completely eradicated. My phone does not know how to autocorrect the word polio because there's a polio vaccine that is readily available, and it's just been that long since it's been an issue. And to ignore things that are like blatant facts really bothers me. If your worldview cannot stand to be examined in a real, rational way, then your worldview is toxic to you.
All right. Your thoughts, Will?
Well, I mean, on which part in particular? Because there's quite a bit that just got covered.
Well, actually, I was just like I said, the whole point of this exercise was to the whole point of the show was just basically kind of a free form. I'm just I was just simply going to say what your thoughts were on all of it, or any parts of that you might want to debate, or that you might want to cover. Anything that's this is pretty much your guys' show. So what do you guys want to cover?
Well, as far as I'll touch on the subject of disease then. As far as disease is concerned, I mean, yes, there are diseases that are no longer in existence, but you have things such as the common cold. Really, we can cure polio, but we can't cure the common cold, and I think that goes to the whole subject of corporate greed. There is more money in making Sudafed and outlawing, mass quantities of buying Sudafed because of drug use and drug manufacturing. And I use drug as a very loose term in this. Illegal substance, I believe, would be a more accurate term. Because there's more money in doing it the way they've done. So.
All right.
Can I just counterpoint that real quick?
Okay, so we got a counterpoint from Mitchell, and then we've got Michelle Sillers in the background who would like to weigh in.
Okay. The common cold is not exactly common. It's actually a variety of of viruses, I believe. Like, it's not just one thing, and even if it were, there's not just one strain of it. That's
Right.
kind of like curing cancer. Curing the common cold is a lot like curing cancer, because yeah, you can cure a specific type of cancer in a specific state if you work at it. But curing cancer in general, there are so many different kinds of cancer that affect the body in completely different ways that it's not really something that's feasible scientifically at this point in time. Also, the issue with drugs is a completely separate issue. That's got to do a lot more with poverty, hopelessness, and mental illness than it does with just necessarily access. So that's something that should be considered.
We have Michelle Sillers weighing in, and then Will Johnson has joined the call. We'll be getting his thoughts on politics in a sec, followed by a roundtable on the gun control issue.
Well, I was just going to say something similar to what was just said regarding the common cold.
Yep.
At last check, they had identified over 3,000 different viruses that together make up what we know as the common cold. And they haven't even identified all of them yet. So if we don't even know how many quote-unquote common cold viruses there are, how are we supposed to cure the common cold? And they keep mutating and forming more and more viruses. We are never going to cure the common cold until we eradicate all viruses, and that is an asymptote.
Thanks again, Michelle. So Will Johnson has just joined the room from North Carolina. Will, your thoughts on politics? I'm assuming you had something you wanted to come in here to mention.
Oh, well, what was the topic we were on? Because I mean, I can sum up politics in one sentence, but I mean, if we're talking something more detailed, then
we were talking about societal issues, but since the whole general topic is what the average person thinks about the American American politics at this time with the elections coming around, your sum up would be particularly interesting.
one, he with the biggest wallet will have the clear advantage, and two, he whom controls the pumpkin spice controls the white girls. And I know I say that jokingly, but it actually makes sense in the political arena here, because it's basically it's with America's two-party system. It's going to eventually, it's going to be a Democrat via Republican, and the fact of the matter remains that neither party has the best interests of the American people in mind, because let's face it, they're politicians, and the interest they have in mind is their own.
Okay. The next thing that I wanted to, apparently William Burgess dropped the call. Hopefully he'll be back shortly. Anyway, the next issue that I wanted to cover, in light of the new recent Oregon shooting that recently happened, two questions that spring to mind on this from the Canadian perspective. One, do you think the American media is sensationalizing a lot of these mass school shootings and portraying there being more of them, or this being more a serious problem than it actually is? And B, what is the appropriate response to this issue? Do we require more gun control, or is there a better way to address these issues to reduce the likelihood of them happening again?
I would say that there's a lot of sensationalization by the media. That's a weird word to say real fast. By the media, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you could blow the destruction of other human beings out of proportion. I don't think that's something that is possible.
All right.
I mean, if we're going to treat life as precious, then all life is precious, period. But I think that they do have a habit of giving these shooters their 15 minutes. And whether they suffer from mental illness or not, because I'm here to tell you a lot of these people have been said not to actually, like, there's a very small percentage of people who have been identified as mentally ill who undertake this kind of violence. But at the same time, you also hear so often about how these people have tried to reach out to others and not gotten any assistance that it makes you wonder. I don't necessarily think gun control legislation is the answer, and that's not because I'm pro-gun, although I am pro-gun. It's worth noting. I do like guns. I like to shoot them. I think they're a good force multiplier for people who otherwise would not be able to protect themselves, and I think they're just a really fun recreational item. They're also really good for putting food on your table. But I don't think that gun legislation is going to help, because in most instances, the guns that are obtained were acquired, and I'm going to say that loosely, usually means stolen, from people who own them legally. So that's not really going to cut down on, and that's not all cases, it may not even be most cases, but it is many. And that's not going to cut down on the accessibility of firearms to those kinds of people. And also, it's not going to cut down the accessibility of illegal firearms, because any body of legislature that expects criminals to obey laws is inherently ludicrous.
Your thoughts on this, Will?
I tend to agree, and it's been said by opponents of gun ownership that a reduction in the amount of available firearms will serve as a reduction in the amount of violent crime, and that is there is no truly unbiased research that supports that theory, and two, regardless of, and there is research that supports the following theory, and it's not even a theory, it's a fact. Regardless of the medium with which regardless of the medium, a criminal mind hell bent on committing a violent act will commit that violent act, regardless of whatever legality or whatever lack of access to a gun they have. If the guy on the street that wants to stab you or wants to injure you, regardless of the fact as if he has a gun or if he has a knife, he's still going to attack you. As far as to how we cut down on these issues, is one, we start actually freaking listening to people when they tell you that there's something going on at home. This is coming from the guy who in the high school and middle school years was targeted as being one of the individuals, if it were to occur in my particular school district, that would be the one to bring a firearm to school and shoot the place up. This is not that I would, because I'm not that kind of guy. But where we need to draw the line is, one, we need to start listening to these people when they tell you something is going on, or when you see warning signs that something's not quite right. And two, we need to this is in general, not just as a result of recent violent firearm tragedies. We need to stop so much racial as well as cultural profiling.
All right. Well, like I said, that pretty much covers everything I wanted to mention. Unless there's a Will, since you were the last one here, the one other question I asked William Burgess and Mitchell was, as an average American citizen, are there any issues that are really important to you that you think that politicians are not properly covering that should be better covered?
A couple of things. One, this is coming from the American side. I can't say the same for Canada, but the American population and the American government in general has the tendency to take a giant dump on its veterans. Something that, and this is coming from someone who served 8 years in a quartermaster battalion. There are Americans in this country that are here illegally that are getting better access to health care, access to better jobs than there are American veterans right now, because they're in, for for every for every American veteran that is getting hired, there's 20 more that are not getting hired because they don't have access to adequate health care, adequate housing. They're not getting, and without a home address in the United States, you will not get a job. One other thing too, speaking of jobs, that's another thing that the American politicians are not taking a true look at. This is again coming from someone, again, 8 years in a quartermaster battalion, and I've been out of work for 2 years, and it's not for lack of trying. There simply is no job market in my area, and from what I've been told, there's no job market on this, in the state, or even in the country.
So, just out of curiosity, then, would you guys say that something akin to Roosevelt's New Deal, but reset for modern day, might not be a bad idea? Politicians actually, creating jobs for people until such time as the economy boosts itself back to normal?
I'm going to say no. As much as I've just ranted about the job thing, I'm going to say no, because America needs jobs, but when I say jobs, we need well-paying jobs that you can support a family on. Obviously, I'm not saying that we need to pay fast food workers and McDonald's workers $10 an hour, because that's not the kind of job that is. But we do need to be paying our construction workers, our farmers, those that are lending to the infrastructure, the clearly crumbling infrastructure of the country. They need to be getting a better wage. And people will say, well, where's this money going to come from? That is the reason why I am not in favor of a government subsidy solely for the purpose of job creation, because all that's going to do is tax the already outrageous national debt. Because let's face it, this is the U.S. When we need money for something, we just borrow. We borrow on a debt that's already outrageous enough that we can't pay, that our kids can't pay, and that our kids' kids are not going to pay.
Okay. We just had Jag Athwai join the show. Mitchell, one sec. Jag, where are you from? And just so this way I know whether we're talking to you about American or Canadian politics. Okay, Jag dropped. Anyway, so Mitchell, your thoughts on this?
I'm going to disagree with a few things that Will said. Not really many. One thing is that the statement that fast food work is not that kind of job. That would be true if the majority of fast food workers were still high school students looking for experience, or college kids trying to make their way through. It's not anymore. That's not the percentages are actually in favor of people in their 30s. People with multiple children, with households. These are the kind of people that are working fast food now in a majority. And to say that it's not that kind of job is to rob them of an actual living wage, because minimum wage is not a living wage. It's not a living wage anywhere in this country. Secondly, I will agree that I don't think that necessarily job creation should be the primary focus, because that's it's an artificial stopgap sort of thing. What are we going to do? Like, what kind of jobs are we going to offer them? What kind of infrastructure do we need to expand? Where are we going to put them to work? In actuality, if you really want to boost the economy, and nobody's going to like this at all, but what you need to do is raise taxes and just hand people money to spend. Because when the American people start spending more money, then more money circulates in through the economy to go to local businesses, which will then be spent on other local businesses or national businesses, and it will keep going. As long as we have large corporate subsidies, we're going to have problems. As long as we have people, an entire political party, griping against illegal immigrants coming in to take our jobs and then shipping jobs overseas where it's cheaper, we're going to have problems. Things like that are huge issues that we're not going to fix overnight. If you really want to do something that's useful, you should look at increasing increasing welfare, because that will give people more money to spend. It will give them money to spend on things that they need and they require, but it will give more money to spend to stimulate the economy. We can take a lot of the money out of the defense budget if we need to, or repurpose some of that for veterans care through the VA or other systems, because they're not getting the help that they need at all. They're not getting the medical attention or the mental help that a lot of them require, and that's absurd when we spend twice as much as the next country on our defense budget when we're not actually under attack anywhere.
Will, your thoughts on this?
A few things to piggyback off of that. And just, for argument's sake, these are statistics from several years ago, because this was when these are statistics that were active when I went through basic training. At that time, the government was paying upwards of 20K a person to put a potential soldier through those 9 to 10 weeks of basic training, and they were paying anywhere from an additional 50K to 500K for advanced training for those particular soldiers for their actual job training. Now, those numbers have likely increased since 2005. So my question to these politicians is, if you're already pumping 6-digit figures into training these young men and women, many of them who've never had a job before in their life, what's stopping you from pumping another couple $100,000 into adequate medical care for these individuals?
Fair enough. We've just been joined by Jag Athwai on the show. Jag, where are you from, and which? Firstly, I should ask: are you from Canada or the United States, so I know which country's elections and which country's politics to bring up for you? And then, secondly, what issues are important to you that you feel the politicians are not covering properly?
Ooh, from Canada. I don't know. Tuition kind of gets a bad rap. Elizabeth May kind of talks about having free tuition for all students of Canada, but I haven't really heard much from Trudeau or Marquette. Don't know if that's my ignorance or if they don't talk about it.
Okay, so besides, with Canada and with the election coming up around the corner. Sorry, guys, this is briefly going to pop to Canada for a sec. With the election rolling up around the corner, what are your thoughts on the polls right now for the top 3 or 4 parties? And do you think that who do you think is most likely going to get in? And if so, what issues would you prefer to see supported besides tuition in the what issues would you personally want to see supported by politicians going back to form parliament?
Ooh, didn't really hear you there in the middle, but I think polls of Liberals might get in. I don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think, I think their policies are pretty good. Well, and they might need to talk a bit more about the environment. Environment and science is one of my main issues that I really look into. I think the Liberals are going to do pretty good for that.
Okay. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. There was one particular important question that I had for all people that was both pertain to Canada and the United States. So with regards to the polling situation, do you guys feel, and this is just from watching the debates and from watching the way the political systems are working across both countries, do you guys feel that this is more that the politics is being adequately treated by the media, or is it being treated more like a rat race?
Oh, this is something the media has a bad habit of doing, and let's face it, they're the media. They're looking for a hot story. I've not watched a news program other than weather in 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because you can't trust a word you hear on, at least, and this is coming from the U.S. anyway, you can't trust a word you hear on U.S. news media because they're going to spin it in, the way that is beneficial to whoever is putting the cash in their pocket. I.e., we look at Fox News versus CNN. They get the same story, and you're not going to get the same coverage from both because it's a known fact of how biased Fox is. It's a known fact of how biased CNN is. So you're not going to get, like I said, you're not going to get accurate and fair reporting. So anything that the media tells us these days, we can trust, and we can trust that it's 90%, use the French, 90%.
Okay. Jacques, your thoughts on this with regards to both American and Canadian media, but specifically with regards to how the election is forming up in Canada. How do you feel the media is treating it? And is there any solutions that you would see to any problems that may be in existence?
No, I think they're pretty. I think they're treating it pretty fairly. It's not too much of a rat race. I think they have pretty good debates.
I'm sorry, Jake, you're breaking up.
Kind of looks like. Sorry?
I said sorry. You froze there. Could you please repeat that?
They've done a good amount of representation of politics. I mean, they have really good debates. It's not like a rat race, like you said. I don't know. They have a really good representation of politics. It's not like a big theatrical experience. I think it's pretty good.
All right. One final question. Just one final question with regard to societal issues. And this is, on the more of the grassroots level kind of deal, or, what societal issues do you guys see need changing? I'm going to go from my right to left. So, for America and Canada. Actually, since Jag's here, we're going to go from left to right. Jag, your thoughts first on any major societal issues that need to be solved in Canada that, even if the politicians can't cover them, what issues, besides the ones you've already mentioned, are personally important to you that you think need to be changed in our society?
Bill C-51 here in Canada. Are you from the United States?
No, I am Canadian. I am Canadian. It's just I'm covering both. I'm trying to cover both countries here, so that's why I'm...
Okay, so you've heard of Bill C-51?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that should pass. I don't think that should pass.
Guthrie has been a staunch opponent of that bill since inception.
Sorry, who?
I am. Sorry, hi.
Yeah.
I've been a staunch opponent of that bill since its inception myself, but I'm just trying to get more from other people about what's going on. So Bill C-51, is there anything else on your docket that you think is a very high priority issue that should be covered as soon as possible?
Bill C-24.
For the American viewers who are not familiar, Bill C-24 is the Second-Class Citizens Act. It gives the federal government the option to repeal people's citizenship on a number of criteria, especially if they have a second country. Pardon?
No, one of the criteria is to commit a crime in another country, your citizenship revoked, and even if that's not a crime in Canada, citizenship can be revoked, which is kind of ridiculous.
Fair enough. Moving on to the American section, Mitchell, any thoughts about other societal issues that you would like to see changed, or have you already covered them mostly for the most part?
I think I've covered most of them. I would like to side note that last bill you guys discussed, from an American's perspective, seems absolutely, completely atrocious and terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Will, to clarify your thoughts, are there any, besides the veterans issues, are there any societal issues that you think need to be addressed that you hold personally dear?
It's been actually it's funny you mentioned that. Mitchell and I were in a slight bit of a debate before I joined in here.
Yeah.
We were on the topic of education, and the States is, and like I said, I don't know about Canada, but from what I've heard, it's similar, though not to this extreme. The average 4-year college in the States is, we're looking at 900,000 tuition. That's just tuition. We're not talking books. We're not talking dorm, any of that. Just 7 to 9K tuition for a 4-year school. Now, that is, that's entry level. And I bring this up because I've said this for years. Monetary issues should not and should never be a hurdle to education, because if Bob over here is from a minimum wage household, and his desire is to rise above something bigger, better than that $15,000 a year job that mom and dad have, why should he have to be stuck in that particular situation? And people will argue, okay, well, hard work gets you where you want to go. This is partially true, but regardless of of how hard that you're working to get into this college, there are colleges right now. It's the one that I intend to transfer to. Will not even consider a college application without a $300 or $500 deposit that you may or may not be returned to you. So all that ends up being is the college, a supposed institute of higher learning, turns into an over-glorified retail establishment.
Jag, your thoughts on this, both from a Canadian perspective and from what you've heard of from Will about the American perspective? Like, how does this affect Canadian universities and Canadian colleges?
Well, the thing is, if university were free, if university was at a decent, a lot of people will go through higher education. And if you have a lot of people going through higher education, I feel like your economy is probably going to do well. That's just my opinion. I do feel as if tuition should be a lot less, or at least more affordable for the every person, because more people through higher education means better paying jobs and better for the economy.
All right. Mitchell, as you were the one who started this show, we're going to end with this education issue. What are your thoughts on both what Jag and what Will Johnson have said?
There used to be a work hard and you can do anything attitude in America. And over time, over the course of my lifetime, I have seen it go from, if you work hard and go to college, then you won't have to flip burgers. From that to, well, you worked hard and put yourself through college, and now you have to flip burgers to pay your debt because there's nowhere else that will hire you in your field, and the jobs are so competitive. We're having it's a weird problem because on the one hand we're very educationally starved, and that a lot of people can't access or afford a very good quality education. But on the other hand, there's also been educational inflation because an entire generation of Americans have been told from childhood, go to college and make something of yourself. So they go to college, and now they're just saddled with ridiculous amounts of debt, and they don't have a job in their field, and they're not happy with where they are in their lives. And so while education may not necessarily be free, or ought to be necessarily free, the country has to realize that if you want to invest in your future, you do it by investing in students every time.
All right. Well, thanks again. I'd like to thank William Burgess, who dropped out earlier, Mitchell Willie, Will Johnson, and Jag Athwai for joining the show. This has been Politics and You, covering Canadian American politics from the average citizen's perspective. Not something you'll see in the mainstream media with all the talking heads and political analysts. I've been Guthrie Prentice, your host. Thank you once again, and good night.